Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi Achint, the Saturday night power packed. I've got two shows lined up for you talking about two very important subjects. One is the Pakistan conundrum, which seems to be actually put across in front of India. And the second is, of course, Xi Jinping and his way back into power in China. I'll come back to you with the Xi Jinping episode with Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar in the next about half an hour. Let's talk about Pakistan, but before I do, I'd like to request all of you hit the like button, press the subscribe, ensure that you're getting notifications of my shows, and of course, yes, please do share the word about this channel. It helps me grow into a larger audience and a larger base. Thank you so much till now for your support, and I'd like to start by talking about Pakistan by a couple of things. The topic of Pakistan actually came up with the recent activities that the Pakistanis have been up to with regards to its game with which is happening with the West. Suddenly, we see a lot of support coming from the Americans. We see some statements that the Germans had passed. So it requires a little bit of thought. What exactly is happening with Pakistan? I've kind of drawn up a scenario to realize that this whole game, this whole love story has also another angle, which is the Pakistani angle. What are they doing, or what are they giving, or what are they getting out of this entire thing? So let's look at what is happening with Pakistan and analyze for ourselves to make an opinion. Pakistan was at the fag end of its influence with regards to its game with across the world, and it's been really sad for the Pakistanis where they've not been able to garner support for a lot of things. As a matter of fact, the whole flood support has been very meek, where the damage is about in billions and billions of dollars. The Pakistanis have just been able to collect a couple of 100 million. So what I want to take us back to the point of time when the SEO summit was happening, and Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif had a very meek sort of an appearance in the SEO. There was a bit of a tension with regards India's strong presence there. Xi Jinping was on a back foot. The Russia-Ukraine war was on, and of course, at that time within Pakistan, the political instability in terms of Imran Khan was also on a pretty much of a high. This SEO summit was followed by the UNGA, which happened in New York. The Prime Minister, as well as the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto, young Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto, landed up in New York. The Prime Minister of Pakistan's speech was, in my opinion, very unimpressive. It touched upon this, same old rhetoric, and he tried to be position himself as a world leader, talking about Kashmir, Palestine, this and that and the other, not really focusing about his own country and the problems within. But leaving all that aside, I want to focus upon what Bilawal was doing during that time. He was pretty active, and a lot of Pakistanis themselves say that he was trying to build up his own profile when he was in Pakistan. Uh, General Bajwa's visit post that also created a certain amount of headlines, but I'll discuss that a little later. Bilawal's interactions, they were pretty forceful. As a matter of fact, he gave interviews where he spoke well. It was not like Imran Khan and the the foreign minister Qureshi used to fumble and create a issue for themselves every time they actually gave an interview. Here it was clear, and he was able to actually communicate really well with the Western audience. Uh, he was active, no doubt, but was it fruitful? Something that the Pakistanis will have to judge for themselves. Uh, as far as the money collection is concerned, I think the Pakistanis, uh, you know, they did collect some aid during his visit, so that's basically all right. The biggest victory that has been touted for Bilawal Bhutto has been the name calling of Kashmir that has been taking place, and that is being termed as the biggest diplomatic victory for Pakistan in recent times. What was this name calling of Kashmir? This was done by the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, who, in a joint press conference, a joint press conference, basically took the name of Kashmir, and this created a huge fervor. Of course, the Indians said, "Okay, what is this? Let's think about it." But Pakistanis, jumped to joy, if I may. So, since I've mentioned the Kashmir thing, I want to talk about three big things that have happened and actually analyze the background of these things. One is the Kashmir, as I said, by Germany. I'll tell you a story about it a little later. Second is the F-16 deal, which took place, $450 million that has been given by the Americans, and the third, which is the receiving ceremony, so called, which was done for General Bajwa. It's, in the Pakistani minds, it was a big, huge success in terms of PR and stuff like that for the outgoing general of the Pakistani army. Let's talk about the Kashmir point first, right? This happened in a press conference that Bilawal Bhutto was giving along with Annalena Baerbock in talking about their bilateral relations. And mind you, the trade between Germany and Pakistan bilaterally is about 3.5 billion dollars. So yeah, okay, fair enough. There's something to talk about there. Uh, she basically mentioned that the Germans would like to look at a UN based solution and this and that and the other. uh, it was a surprise because Germany is never actually mentioned about Kashmir earlier, but it was a surprise where this thing, and I said, this was a diplomatic victory that was touted for the Pakistanis. YouTube videos are made overloaded, pointing fingers at India, analysis galore, articles written, so-called geostrategic experts and so on and so forth wrote, dancing in the streets, short of the Bhangra was done on this particular thing, that हमको West से थोड़ा support मिल गया है, and that was the bottom line of this entire thing. Now, why this particular thing was said is something that we'll have to understand a little bit, and I'd like us to actually put that up for a little bit later, because I want to take us through the 3 points that I mentioned and then actually decipher them and try to find out why this particular thing is happening and what is the focus of Pakistan when they're doing something like this. Remember, Pakistan is a national security state where the army basically is supreme. Keeping that aside, let's move forward. Uh, the F-16 deal, this particular deal was it was this was actually the beginning, but the whole Kashmir thing was a little more juicy, so I couldn't really resist putting this F-16 deal behind above the Kashmir thing. One of the biggest things I want to point out here, that this deal is being touted as an upgradation. Well, it is more like an update, or rather than an upgradation. Update can also be fixing up basic systems to ensure they run. Because please understand, these are systems, they need to be brought up to a certain software for them to run if efficiently. There are spare parts which are required. Pakistanis don't manufacture spare parts for the F-16s and so on and so forth. So, you know, this and that and the other. The reason that was given for this particular deal was counter-terror, and I think I'm not going to be able to put it any better than the External Affairs Minister, as Jaishankar, put it across, as you're not fooling anybody. No one in India was fooled, and as a matter of fact, it was a very clear, sort of a game. General Bajwa was receiving, actually, was something of a surprise, but I don't think I would put too much of heat into it, because he was a senior general. He was there during the Afghan conflict for a long time with the US, and a lot of coordination would have happened. And then, certain relationships are there which needed to be maintained by the US. Fair enough. I'd not put too much heat into it, but something that General Bajwa said over there with regards to the army's interference kind of picked my attention, and I'll deal with it. The popular belief which was put across initially is that all these actions are being taken to probably irritate India, to send a message to India, with regards to its stand in Ukraine, buying Russian oil and so on and so forth. So probably I think there's a certain popular belief that uh, tended to think this way. I to a certain extent, I'd agree to this, because as a matter of fact, there's a certain narrative against India which has suddenly started up. There are loads of other things which have happened. There's advisories which have come out. New York Times have actually, I think, rehired their journalist. Washington Post seems to have done the same thing. And there's a report today that India is some number 107 or whatever in the hunger index. I mean, who believes that? It's another story altogether. And I'll talk about this whole threat to India with regards to this whole Western influence and the Western narrative that is building up in a separate episode. Let's focus on Pakistan today. I want to take us back now. We understood the three major incidents that I want to talk about. One is the F-16 deal, second is the Kashmir name, and the third was the visit by General Bajwa, and something that he mentioned about the army kind of staying away from the political discourse within Pakistan. Let's understand what Pakistan is all about. Pakistan is a country right from the beginning has needed a strong man. They've always said, "Yaar, ek banda aega who will fix everything for us," and that's something a lot of us believe, and you'll hear this from many geopolitical analysts that in Pakistan there's a tendency to pray and will for the big strong man to come and kind of fix the country. Uh, Many theories have uh, been related towards the militarization of the Pakistani politics, society, and stuff like that. I kind of tend to believe a certain theory, and I'm going to put it out there. A lot of you might disagree, but that's fine. This there's a trend that was started up by certain people within Pakistan right at the beginning. This is after Jinnah. People like Major General Iskander Mirza, who basically, maneuvered himself to become the Governor General of Pakistan, and he was the guy who actually brought Ayub Khan, um, who was promoted. I think three or four chaps who were senior to him, and he was promoted and made the army chief and stuff like that. Uh, this is by the way, let me just add here. Mirza brought in Ayub Khan, and Ayub Khan dismissed Mirza within the next 3 weeks. So that's the story of Pakistan. This is, I think, in 1956, where all this nonsense started up, where the game of this thing started up. I mean, I don't want to digress, but what I want to point out is the militarization of the political discourse and the society of Pakistan. This whole concept of the martial race that the Pakistanis keep talking about, that the army and the martial race, we are warriors and this and that, and there's a constant debate that you see with very educated chaps. I mean, as a matter of fact, I've heard people like Najam Sethi, who I respect quite a bit in terms of his opinion. Off and on, yes, there are differences, but that's generally he's got a very straight-headed opinion. Uh, the debate that he also puts across is that should Pakistan be actually a democracy? And that question has hounded Pakistan right at the beginning. So the first martial law that was put up by President Mirza at that time, or Governor General Mirza, or President Mirza, as you would like to call it, was also basically hinting towards the same thing, that 15% of Pakistan is literate. How can we understand this whole Western concept of democracy? I want to straighten out the country, and he put Ayub Khan in charge of the country, and he threw him out. Ayub Khan in turn threw the same guy out after 3 weeks. I digress. Okay. Now, what happened with this particular move is that the army basically realized, here is a country that we can take charge of. Here is a country that can benefit the organization to ensure that its sustenance, its strength, and its power of money stays. So, I mean, if that sort of an opportunity is provided, well, they took it. Uh, at the beginning of Pakistan, there was a perceived threat that was put across about India, and that actually basically justified the large army that the Pakistanis wanted to have, and the large amount of resources that army wanted to put across within its operations. It's an interesting story because slow and steady with regards to this threat perception that they kept having, the wars that we kept fighting with Pakistan. uh, all of them started by them, by the way. And when I say we fight, it's a matter of speech. So I'd not want to be caught on to that particular front. But it transformed into something called a national security state. The ISI took command, the army took command, and national security was paramount. It was above all else. Long story short, one of the reasons Pakistan was created itself, and I'd like to put this point across, was basically a security paradigm where the Pakistanis were supposed to create a barrier between India and the erstwhile USSR, and so the Pakistanis kind of played their part, aligned with the US, uh, played their part in terms of US strategies. It was a more security related strategy. Pakistan got money for its military to ensure that it was kept strong. The US at, I think, in 1965 and even 71 supported the Pakistanis militarily against India as well. So there was a security relationship that kind of developed between the Western powers and uh, you know Pakistan itself. Pakistan played its part, as a matter of fact, as I said, during the Soviet times, even during the bloody Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, where this whole Taliban movement started up. Post that, during the 9/11 years, Pakistanis aligned themselves with the US, and this in spite of the fact that there was huge amount of damage being done to the Pakistani community itself, uh, you know, uh, with regards to terrorism and whole lot of other things that happened within Pakistan. But it gave the opportunity for the army to modernize. What I'm trying to get at is that this was a time when Pakistanis got money. This was a time when Pakistani army became stronger, and it was a time that people actually saw things happening for Pakistan. So a national security policy at the paramount gave Pakistan whatever little joy that it got during its existence till now. And that's something that we must understand. You know, the good old saying, money was flowing in containers from America, and that's uh, something that we must understand. The Pakistani relationship with the USA, with any of its foreign allies, has been about security. Now it is transformed into money. That's a different story altogether. But till now, it was all about a security relationship. US, we know they were part of CETO CENTO erstwhile, and they were a major non NATO ally of USA, and so on and so forth. So there was a whole game that was being played uh, by the West with Pakistan, and Pakistan's priority number one was national security, and of course, it's military. Look at China. The relationship with China is again strategic and military. You know, the Chinese want that road to go through Pakistan to ensure their own strategic autonomy in terms of their oil and stuff like that. In case there's a blockade of the oceans, they wanted to kind of avoid the ocean dilemma. Uh, there is a certain relationship which actually the Pakistani Chinese relationship, let me just put this across very clearly, is based on a common enmity with India. The Chinese fund the Pakistanis to ensure that another front is created for India, so that the Indians are kind of busy. And again, a security paradigm. Look at the OIC. OIC is used, and they fire the gun out of OIC shoulders to target India for Kashmir. Kashmir, let me remind everyone watching here, is a baseline of Pakistani national security interests. So, Kashmir, national security interest, army, Pakistan, like, paramount. You cannot touch these things in Pakistan. So, having put that as a base and having established the fact that Pakistan is a national security state where most of its foreign relations are influenced, I would say all of its foreign relations are influenced by national security and its army. There's a reason why they're not taking medicines and stuff like that they need from India today. It is because national security, the army, and the establishment, where things would not probably move. This whole national security state, where defense is paramount rather than the well being of people, has brought them to this juncture. Now, let's look at recent events where I'd like to kind of point out that with this national security being the foreign policy of Pakistan, how is it that suddenly it's been able to get certain deals out from the Americans and from the Germans and from generally from the West? There has to be some game. Let's find out what's the game. The first series of events started rolling with a drone strike that happened in Afghanistan, where the Americans killed Ayman al Zawahiri. Uh, Rumors have it, even now, that the drone either flew from Pakistan or used Pakistani airspace. Soon after that, the Pakistanis got a gift from the sky of $450 million for their F-16s. So that apart, and I had actually done a show where I mentioned that the Pakistanis are now going to shift towards the US with regards to their geostrategic policy, dumping China. It's there in my, it's a solo video that I had done. It's there on my channel. Please do have a check. And if you do like it, hit the like button and share it with people. Right. So, as I said, the drone strike happened. Soon after that, $450 million came in. And of course, I also believe today that because of US's requirements in terms of basic security within the region, they want to have certain access within Pakistan. These drone flights and stuff like that are still continuing to this day. Pakistani civilian population will not get to know. It's happened before multiple times where the civilian government and the population did not know about the army having leased bases to the Americans. It can happen again, and I'm sure it is being done even today. So that probably is the kind of relationship that the Americans are sharing with this thing. And of course, the changeover of the army chief, it's a well-known fact that Americans are involved to a certain extent with regards selection of the army chief, because they have certain interests within this particular region. Remember, the Americans have probably built Pakistan. They looked the other way when the Pakistanis was developing their nuclear weapons. So it's something that we need to kind of think about. Let's talk about Germany here. So I've established the US's motive. There's obviously something that the Pakistanis are giving to the US, probably an airbase, probably airspace, probably surveillance, intelligence, something in return. No deal. There's no free lunches. There is nothing known as a free lunch or aid, as a matter of fact, that is going to come to Pakistan's way. And I'll tell you why as we close the episode. German ambassador mentioned his position on the German foreign minister mentioned his position on Kashmir, and of course, as I said, bhangradas were being powered in Pakistan. Things were hunky dory. But when you do just a little bit of a surface dig, you realize the Germans have certain Afghans that were loyal to them during uh, the time of the German presence within Afghanistan, and they want to get these guys out. Pakistan is basically a travel channel. The amount of Afghans that are wanting to immigrate into Germany are also very, very high. So the Germans are kind of wanting Pakistan to wet them before they come to Germany. So there's a task, there's a gift in return. Pakistan's foreign policy, give and take. There is nothing in terms of a free lunch. Because I'd like to ask the Pakistanis, and I know there are certain Pakistanis who watch my show, what do you have to give to the world that the world will start supporting you today? Even if you're being used as a messaging platform to India, look where you've come down to. Let's move forward. I'd also like to mention here, it doesn't take away from the fact that the Pakistanis are being used against India today, and there is a certain narrative which is being built against India so that India can be put under a certain pressure. And as I said, I'm going to be doing a certain video about it and talk about it in a little bit. This was just a short video that I wanted to put across. I'm going to be coming up with a video with Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar very shortly on, and that is today, right now, tonight, on the Xi Jinping return on 20th Party Congress. Before I do that, like this video, check the subscription, share it with your friends, and if you can, do contribute to the Dev Talks effort. Check out my website, www.thedevtalks.com. Coming to the conclusion of my talk, as I said, what's happening right now? What did we see happening today? The US released a national security policy where Pakistan has been mentioned. Guess how many times? Zero. If Pakistan was so important, at least one time they would have mentioned it. India has been mentioned multiple times, where they talk about India being an important critical ally within the Indo-Pacific, ally/partner, and so on and so forth within the Indo-Pacific. It is important that we must understand the Pakistanis as a mindset. Small things kind of make them very happy, because happiness comes far and few between within Pakistan. Another thing that the President Biden actually said today, it was interesting, where he mentioned that he's very, very concerned about Pakistan, it being a sort of a nuclear state with no sort of controls and command structures uh, whatsoever with regards to these nuclear weapons. There's a big uproar coming out from Pakistan that how dare he say something like this and this and that and the other. That is the reality. As we all say, that Pakistan as a country is a country which is more concerned about its defense than anything else, than its trade, people, commerce, floods, nothing. It is a very important thing that we must understand. The Pakistanis, if they've been able to achieve something within the West, we must ask this question: what did you give in return? Because no relationship with Pakistan is without a give and take. And that is the bottom line of what I'm wanting to say. If the Pakistanis been able to get $450 million worth of F-16 spare parts, it was because they gave the airspace in return. If the Pakistanis got the K word, the Kashmir word mentioned by the Germans, is because they become sort of a travel agent for the people who come out of Afghanistan. Remember this very clearly: the West is being using Pakistan for its own benefit, and it is time that the Pakistanis come wise about it. But having said that, for a country that is ruled by a national security policy and security being paramount, The Kashmir policy is something that they can't step back from. The whole victory of Bilawal Bhutto seems so naive today when the German ambassador to India came out and said, well, this whole statement has been taken too far. I'd like to put everything on record. There's no change in German stand with regards to Kashmir. So, let's just calm down and stuff like that. So he basically fussed everything out. Here is a country which was so called, whose army chief was received. 10 days later, he's been called a rogue nuclear power. That is the story of Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining me and for listening to this episode. I want to put this across again once more. Pakistan's relations are give and take. With regards to what's happening with India, we shall discuss on another day. Till then, as I said earlier, subscribe, like, share your comments, share your thoughts, and yes, do contribute to the Dev Talks efforts if you can. Till next time, in the next about 10 minutes, with Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar discussing the Xi Jinping and his return to power, if I may put it that way, in China. Jai Hind.